So I think the second most popular question or topic when people communicate with me or watch my videos after the how'd you do those lights has been about the amount of KORG gear that I have. And for a long time I've wanted to make a video just kind of talking about my history with KORG and what draws me to them, what drew me to them originally. And so hope you're ready for a story. This will take a little while to get through, but when I was a kid, we got a hold of a cassette tape in our house by a guy named Michael W. Smith, who is a Christian recording artist. This would have been around 1988 or 89, I'm thinking 88, when his Eye to Eye album came out. That's the cassette that we ended up with. And I listened to the first track, Hand of Providence. Wasn't interested as a kid. I think I was 10 at the time. And I, for some reason, came back to it a few days later, maybe a week later. I'm not sure how much time passed, but gave the whole album a listen, and I was just hooked. And so I loved his music. Started listening to it whenever I could, and honestly, you know, growing up, in particular in the 90s, that was all I listened to. We didn't turn the radio on much. There was some music in the house, but not a lot. But when I was in my room or, you know, older and started driving in the car, I mean, he was the guy I was listening to. I just waited for every new album to come out. I was able to go see him in concert a few times. Somewhere around 93, maybe, Christmas of 90, maybe 92, I got the Change Your World Live VHS. So for those of you who remember VCRs, got the VHS recording of that Change Your World tour he was on. And that was the first time I think I was aware of keyboards being branded. In other words, not just a keyboard sitting on a stage with piano keys, but actually different companies made them. So for that tour, he played a KORG 01W Pro X. And so that was my first introduction to KORG, and again, just because of my affection for that music and for him as an artist, it just stuck. So that's what I wanted to play from the time I was, 15 on. And I won't go into all of my history of playing. I'm just kind of wanting to talk about why I have what I have. But so fast forward to the year 2000. I bought my first KORG keyboard, which was a Triton Pro X. Somewhere along the way, I think somewhere in like 96, right after the Trinity had come out in 95, I think I'd read an article where Michael W. Smith had ordered, I want to say 5. I wish I could find the article. I haven't been able to find it. I thought it said he ordered 5 Trinities to finish up his I'll Lead You Home tour that he was on at the time. Again, I don't have any record of that article, and so if anybody knows where to find it, let me know. But so I was like, okay, Trinity, that's cool, that's what I want. I'm sure I'd seen it in magazines and whatnot by that point. Actually went to a music store, saw one, played it, walked back out because as 17 or 18 year old, obviously not going to be able to afford that. So fast forward to the year 2000, my wife and I were married in May of that year, and then in October I made the very foolish decision in hindsight to take out a loan to buy a keyboard because I thought I was going to write songs and change the world. So I borrowed enough to go buy what I thought was going to be a Trinity Pro X, and interestingly, I was disappointed to find out Trinity had been discontinued in favor of the Triton. But it was still KORG, and it was the latest and greatest, so I bought a Triton Pro X, and that was my first KORG purchase. Followed A few months later, buy a KORG IX 300 just because I wanted more KORG. So never got the Trinity, and always wanted it. I mean, it just, again, just because of all of the circumstances growing up, that's just the keyboard that I wanted. So, you know, I start writing on the Triton using the sequencer on there. I'm writing, you know, multi-track, full accompaniment basically, and then dumping that out or recording that out into I had a KORG D8 digital hard disk recorder at the time, and then I was singing vocals over the top of that. And that's how I was making music as a younger person. So I did that, kept that keyboard and that rig for a number of years. In 2008, we were expecting our second child, didn't have room in the house, so the Triton went. I was kind of giving up on music anyway. Sold the Triton. I think I always had some kind of a MIDI keyboard laying around, just a controller of some kind. But at any rate, fast forward to 2013, I get a Mac Mini, start playing with GarageBand. I get an Alesis QX49 just to have a controller to use with it, because I think I was without one at that moment. And then so just messed around with that over the years. In 2019, I got the opportunity to record one of my old songs with a buddy of mine who had Pro Tools in his house. He has a band, they write, he records. It was a really neat experience to hear how things could sound in, first of all, modern times, but second of all, you know, in a computer environment, which I hadn't recorded in before. And of course, with modern sounds, it made all the difference. So I kind of got the bug back. At the end of December, at the end of 2019, I was looking online. I don't remember what I was looking for. I came across a store called Music Go Round, which is a music resale chain in the United States. It's not in every state even. It's not that big of a store, but the one here close to me in St. Louis had a KORG Trinity Pro X, and I think it was $5.99. And I thought, man, I got to go take a look at that. So I did. Ended up buying it, and then if you've watched my studio evolution video, that's one of the first shots you see is that Trinity Pro X that I bought. So anyway, and then it's kind of gone from there. So I won't go into the rest of what I have right now, but I've spent a lot of time kind of collecting some of the old KORG keyboards that were around when I was a kid, when I was, you know, really interested in wanting to buy some of those, but couldn't, and really wasn't even aware of a lot of them. So that's how I've ended up with the ones I've got. And many have come and gone. I've had them, you know, had the opportunity to play them and thought, you know, these are cool, but this is just not a good fit for the studio. However, this is my interesting story. You can take it or leave it, but over the years, because of my awareness of the O1W Pro X, I'd always thought it'd be cool to get one just to have one. They're huge. I mean, they're nearly 80 pounds in weight. They're just an enormous, the Pro X with the 88 weighted keys, they're just an enormous instrument. And most of the time when I would find one for sale online, it was either far away, so no way to go get it, or really hard to tell what condition it was in. So somewhere around the fall of 2019, my dad and I had started working on a keyboard repair for my buddy who helped me with the recording. And we've kind of gotten into that as a hobby and a sideline. It's been really interesting. But in January of 21, I came across another O1W Pro X in the Chicago area. So it's about 5.5 hours from where I live. The guy just listed, I don't even remember how it was listed. It needed some work, apparently. He was asking $250 for it, which was a really good price, and I thought, well, for that price I could make the day trip without a problem. So I got in touch with him, and we communicated back and forth over, I don't know, a couple of days. And for some reason, after he'd answered all the questions, I had a lot of questions. Obviously, it was going to be a long day in the car. I wasn't sure what I was getting into. It turns out he had a studio at his house, but was primarily a guitar player. So he was using the O&W Pro X just as a MIDI controller, MIDI input device. Didn't even know if it had sounds, because one of the questions I asked him towards the end of our conversation over a couple of days was, do you know if it has any custom sounds in it? And I don't have any idea what prompted me to ask that question. I've got no idea. So I asked him that, and he said, I don't know if it does or not. But he said, but this was Michael W. Smith's touring keyboard back in the 90s. He said, my wife got it when we lived in Nashville. She was a student at Belmont University, and apparently there used to be a program where local artists would turn in gear, and students would have an opportunity to pick it up for, I guess a pretty inexpensive price, if you will. But I was floored. We hadn't discussed Michael W. Smith at all. It hadn't come up in conversation. Nothing really about either one of our backgrounds had come up. The entire conversation had been about the keyboard. So after I picked myself up off the floor, I told him I would take it. And so Dad and I ran up to Chicago to pick that up, and we got it cleaned up. It needed a new battery and factory reloads, and it's as good as new. So it's really exciting for me to have that keyboard, given my history with him as an artist and with KORG. But I've had a few of my friends say, well, the guy was just trying to sell it to you, that's why he told you that. And I mean, I suppose that's possible. A couple of reasons I don't believe that. The first one is, it never came up until I asked him specific questions about sounds. So if he was trying to use a name to sell it, it would have been in the listing, I believe. Secondly, it would not have been Michael W. Smith, who has been a popular artist over the years, but if you were trying to get rid of one of those, you would say, well, this was used by Charlie Daniels keyboardist. Something that people would, a more common name that people would recognize. So those are a couple reasons I think that likely, he's telling the truth, but that's what I'm choosing to believe anyway. So it's a really cool story, I think. I don't know if anyone else thinks that or not, but definitely a cool story. I have that keyboard, in the basement right now. It's set up, I use it, it's never going anywhere. I will keep that one forever. So anyway, the short version is, I was a huge Michael W. Smith fan, still am. But he's kind of the one that got me started on the road to KORG. And the ironic part, of course, is that he played KORG, I guess, for a few more years, and then I think signed with Yamaha maybe to their group of artists. But anytime you see him live now, he's on a Yamaha, and I think probably records primarily with it. I don't know. But on the liner notes for, I think This Is Your Time, it talked in there about how he records with Yamaha gear, and I think it said Macintosh computers at the time. So anyway, I think, unless he's got some KORG laying around that he likes to use in the studio for whatever, I think those days may be behind him. But that's where I got started. That's kind of my history with them. Anyway, I know this was a long-winded story, but I wanted to share it because I think the end of it's neat. My history with this brand's probably not different from a lot of other people's who were a fan of someone, and that drove them to play a certain instrument. I think that's probably actually really common. But the end story where I end up with one of these keyboards that, by all appearances, was owned by Michael W. Smith, I think is the cool part of the story to me anyway. So I will be back with more videos talking about the specific keyboards that I have in my studio. I'm working right now with the Trinity. I ended up getting rid of the Pro X because I didn't need another weighted keyboard, but I replaced it with a 61 key version. That's another keyboard I'll probably never be without. So anyway, I've been trying to learn some patch design, and so I've got, I don't know, 6 or 7 custom patches going, and I hope to share those sometime soon with you all. Anyway, long-winded video, a lot of rambling. Appreciate you hanging around to the end. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below. Again, I'm hoping to build my channel to have a good avenue for communication. It's been really neat to meet a lot of new people through this YouTube channel. So I'd be honored if you would choose to subscribe, like the video, leave some comments below. I like to interact with people through here. So anyway, thanks again for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one.